Dear Mr. Trump, May 29, 2019. By Anna von Reitz. You may consider this an order from the civilian government of this country, requesting and requiring that you impose command and control over the Internal Revenue Service and the US Treasury Department and the US Department of the Treasury and all their little private bill collectors nationwide, including something calling itself the Tax Processing Center, with no address at all, but the name of the town or city, for example, Tax Processing Center, Big Lake, Alaska. Their practice of making up new variations of names for people and attaching these gifts to us and our assets as a means of asserting new false claims is nothing but fraud and harassment, and it needs to be stopped. Now. Yesterday. Last week. Last year. 10 years ago. Or, as in my case, over 20 years ago, when I gave the Internal Revenue Service, IRS Notice of Revocation. Yes, Mr. Trump, I retired and formally expatriated from any territorial or municipal citizenship obligation, and I fully informed the State Department, returned the accounts to Mr. Mnuchin's fiduciary responsibility, and wiped my hands a long time ago. Not only that, I seized ownership interest and control of all my names, and all my names, in all variations, permutations, styles, punctuations, and orderings whatsoever, and returned them all to their natural permanent domicile on the land and soil of Wisconsin, the Federation Compact state where I was born. All these records are public. All of them have been duly recorded. So what do your feckless subcontractors do, but try to create yet another variation of one of my names using a tiny little change in punctuation, which, however, I have also already claimed as my property and placed on the public record, and use that as a means to assert false claims in commerce and also in international trade against me and my assets in the world of fact. What is there about that little word, no, and the fact that no means no, are the adult members of your administration not getting? All your buddies work for me, even if the Queen or the Pope pays their wages. I am not pleased whatsoever by the continued misadministration of the federal taxing authority and the gross frauds and racketeering taking place on our shores. Millions of Americans are being harassed for no sane reason. Millions, Mr. Trump. What you need to do is admit the circumstance. Just admit it. Your national debt is our national credit. As we access our credit, that will pay down your debt. Inform your other creditors that the American people showed up at the last minute, back from overseas, hungry, footsore, and not at all happy with what has gone on here. I suggest that you pick up Charles Rettig by both ears and send him packing before I do. We are not franchises of the municipal government. We are not paupers. We are not employees nor dependents of the federal government. We are not withholding agents. Not warrant officers in the Merchant Marines. We are not voluntary franchisees. We are not United States citizens. We are not citizens of the United States. We are not dependents. Not. It is only going to shine a much brighter light on the corruption of the corporations involved if you do not order an end to the fraudulent impersonation and racketeering committed by these private bureaus. So, do what has to be done to shut these malfunctioning agencies down and retask and retrain them to make sure that Americans have access to their national credit. We are charging $1 trillion per head as valued today and ever afterward for every American who dies or is maimed or otherwise significantly harmed in any altercation arising from any forced conscription or confiscation of land jurisdiction assets by any incorporated entity including the IRS and the Internal Revenue Service and the United States Department of the Treasury and the Department of the United States Treasury and the US Treasury Department, and the Bureau of Federal Taxation and the Tax Processing Centers and all the municipal government goons posing as revenue officers. They all need to be retasked and right about now. We realize the consternation that this demand places upon all the other creditors, but the fact remains that we are your priority creditors as well as the priority creditors of the United States, and compared to what both the Queen and Pope owe to us, all the rest is chicken change. It's time for them and all the actual corporations, not the personal corporations that have been created in bad faith and fraud, to pay for their sins and for our credit to be redeemed. Worldwide. Remind the Pope of the double golden jubilee and what is actually required of him, both as Pope and as Roman Pontiff. Tell him I said so, and so did Mother Mary. Those roses I received are to be delivered. And as for Mr. Barr, I like him, but his office is all messed up, too. We are owed the return of all our land jurisdiction assets. Mr. Barr has inherited the job of the alien property custodian, and that's our property he is still holding. It all belongs to the American states and people, and we are the only American states and nations that have the provenance, standing, and treaties to inherit. We are the only people left alive and in possession. So return what is owed to the United States of America, unincorporated, to us. Collapse the trusts and the titles back to the states and the people. That is the only sane and proper solution to this debacle. Please tell the Queen that for me, too. We aren't going to stand here and let secondary creditors prey upon us under false pretenses. The jig is up. The fraud is known. And at $1 trillion ahead, those promoting these outrages on our soil are not likely to secure any profit from their actions. So please pass that posted charge on to the Bilderbergers, too. All the land assets belong to us, and we shall charge them all up the wazoo if they do anything but return our assets unharmed, debt-free, and unencumbered. Most sincerely, Anna Maria Riesinger, Fiduciary.